So good job, Yosana, getting your revenge on me and making me cry. When Reverend Christine started planning services for the fall, I asked her if I could do a service this weekend about being a veteran. As Veteran Day happens to overlap this year with the end of what has been an ever-present part of my life for the last 21 years, and as Yosana has made clear, has been an ever-present part of all our lives. I just felt a need to share with you what it's meant for me. So I ask you to bear with me a little bit longer as you join me on this cathartic exercise. So what does being a veteran mean to me? The most concise answer I can give is it's complicated. Many of you may not know that I not only served in the military, but I grew up as a military brat as well. My dad served in the Air Force, so I have the experience of being the child of someone in the military, as well as the experience of being in the military. As a young adult, as I would think back on growing up, I had a lot of negative feelings. As a kid that was painfully shy and more than a little bit awkward, moving every 2, 3, 4 years was really tough. Making new friends was hard for me, and then adjusting to a new school with new teachers and different curriculum just added to the turmoil of my life. Also prevalent in my memories was resentment for how much more of my father, the Air Force, got than I did. So often my dad would be gone for training or on an assignment away from home. And even when my dad was home, he so often came home from work so exhausted that he didn't have much energy left to give to us. As a child, it was painful to see my dad be so fun and involved in everything his troops were doing, and then be zombie-like for us. I remember wondering why he cared about his troops so much more than he did us. So if you ask me how I feel about being a veteran, especially after hearing my daughter speak, and I did not read her comments beforehand because I wanted to experience the moment with you, a big part of what I feel is guilt. Guilt for putting my children through the constant moving and new schools and being torn away from friends that they had made. Guilt for always having to be on at work and often not having anything left for Gita and the girls when I came home. Guilt for the pain I caused every time I left for training or a deployment. But there are many great things about growing up in the military as a military brat as well. Living in England and traveling around Europe as a kid had a profound effect on me. That's when I first fell in love with history, because I was living in the history. I could experience it firsthand. And 2 degrees later, history still brings so much joy to me. And although I had a hard time making friends, I am still friends with people I haven't seen in person for 30 years because we have shared experiences that so few others have had. As I have served, I've continued to form lifelong friendships with others all over the country. And I've seen Gita and the girls do the same. It's pretty cool that I know that if I wanted to go, say, to Kansas City next weekend, that we'd have friends there that would open their home to us and greet us as if we had never left. So I feel guilty, but I also feel grateful. It's complicated. These are just some of the thoughts and feelings that are floating around inside of me on Veterans Day. This causes a lot of reflection on my military service. It's very hard for me to think about my deployment to Afghanistan, where I met and worked with some of the most courageous Afghans that were fighting to make Afghanistan the country they wanted for their children. To think about all they sacrificed only to have us leave and the Taliban institute an archaic, barbaric system that is the literal antithesis of what they fought for makes this day very difficult for me. So I feel guilty, I feel grateful, I'm reflective. It's complicated. And for me in particular, being a liberal-minded member of the military, it is hard for me to ever truly feel comfortable around others, no matter the environment. Although there are way more liberals in the military than many people think, we are still the minority, and the conservative majority is way more vocal. They're not afraid to tell you. So it's hard to show all of who I am to my military brethren. As far as being open about my military service with all of you, honestly, I have chosen to be open about it in spite of how I've been treated, not because of how I've been treated. I've been asked on more than one occasion how I can reconcile being a UU and being in the military, as if those two things are so diametrically opposed as to rule out being one if you are the other. And don't get me wrong, I understand the extensive history of pacifism in Unitarian Universalism. Remember, I love history. But I can also tell you about the history of accepting the necessity of war in order to stop an evil when other means are unsuccessful. If you ever want to history deep dive, read about Unitarian President William Howard Taft's thoughts on war. So how do I reconcile being a UU and being in the military? Honestly, I know there are bad people out there that need to be stopped, ideally by peaceful means. But if nonviolence isn't an option, I would rather someone like me be leading those that fight than someone filled with hatred or anger. So how do I feel about Veterans Day? I feel guilty, yet grateful. I feel isolated, yet belonging. It's complicated. Thank you.